So we have Fr Bernard here in St. John's, and Fr Bernard, I'm just here to have a chat with you about the bells in Tralee.
Yeah, well, what we have here at the moment is a digital setup, a digital Carillon, which kind of allows us to play tunes and indeed imitate some of the famous church bells of Europe. So if you wanted to, you could have the sounds of St. Peter's Basilica or Big Ben or whatever ringing out across Tralee. Now, again, we don't maybe have a huge tradition of bell ringing in Ireland as we would in much of Europe. So, in a certain sense, it's a pity that we only have the digital setup, but technology does have its advantages and it allows us to play tunes on the bells very easily for special feast days like today, the 15th of August.
So I was listening to it this morning, and you were playing a number of tunes out for the Feast of the Assumption, and it sounded lovely. And the bells that you were using there were a number of different bells playing, but we just have one bell in St. John's, is that it?
Now, again, this is all long before my time. When I was small, when I was a child in the 80s, I remember that there used to be an actual real bell rung from the bell loft here in St. John's. There was a rope running down. If you came in the door of the church, you see the rope running down, and the altar servers would pull the rope. And I've spoken to older guys in altar service here, and they were called being pulled up by the bell. I have no idea whether that original bell is still up there or not. What I do know is that at the moment we have the digital setup here, which is what we use. And again, some of it is pre-programmed in that there is a regular daily schedule. The bells ringing, 10 minutes before Mass, and then for different occasions, then whether it be a wedding or a funeral or whatever, you can press the right button and the appropriate sound of the bell is played.
When you were playing this morning, did you choose that you wanted them to sound from a particular cathedral, or you just pressed the button?
Not specifically today. When I was playing a couple of hymns dedicated to Our Lady today, I just chose the tunes. Now, in the past, I have chosen particular bells. A number of months ago, we had a celebration here, which coincided with a prayer service in St. Peter's in Rome. And I suppose just for the fun of it, really, after we finished our service, I hit the button and I had it, doing the same peal that they would ring in St. Peter's in Rome, on a feast day, which was a nice little touch, again, just showing there's a little connection there. Don't know whether anyone noticed it, other than myself, but it's nice we do have that capability.
If we go and look at the machine, and so it's festive, Ave Maria, funeral, swing, that's interesting, yeah. Mass, and and you have memory cards, so you could buy memory cards to put in.
Again, I don't know the details of that. What I do know is we have a list of tunes here.
Yes.
And I can show you now actually what we can do. For example, today is the Feast of the Assumption, and our singer Sabrina sang Immaculate Mary at the end of Mass this morning. So I came in here to sacristy after Mass and said, you know what? I'll play the exact same thing at the bells just as people are leaving, so they'll hear it again. And it's very simple. Just press the button here, and Immaculate Mary is tune 1, 2, 3. And given that we're just coming up to the evening Mass now, there's no harm putting on the bell. There's a bit of music out there in the street because the festival is coming up, so we might as well add to the noise while we're here, and it plays it. Now you can't really hear well from in here, but if you want, you can switch it to the speaker in here. Now when it's playing in here, it's not playing outside, so I'll switch it back outside, and people will know there's Mass coming up in 15 minutes.
Okay. And do you get special requests?
Not really, no. Again, I don't think many people pay too much attention to it these days. In a certain sense, church bells have lost their significance. There was a time, maybe, certainly, before everyone had a clock, when the ringing of the church bell in a town, was the way that people kept time. I remember actually a story being told a few years ago. Now this is going back maybe 70 or 80 years. Just after daylight savings time was brought in, and there was a parish priest somewhere in Kerry, somewhere in the rural part of Kerry, and he announced at Mass one Sunday, the clocks are going back next Saturday for those of you that have clocks. But it was a reality, I suppose, up until, kind of certainly, before the 20th century, not everyone would have a clock in their home. And, the church bells were something that the whole town depended on to keep track of, what time was what. So it's really with the introduction of, say, kind of railways and so it's more commercialisation of the world, that accurate timekeeping became something that concerned a lot of people and that everyone had access to. Again, eventually you get to a stage where everyone has kind of the watch and they have the alarm clock at home, whatever, but it was something that, had a great significance. And it is a thing as well, just that it used to be a thing that church bells gave messages to people as well, in that there were, depending on where you are, there were different customs, say around funeral bells, for example, that, you rang the bell a particular way when a man died, and you rang the bell another way when a woman died. This is actually something that in my previous parish of Dingle, the custom still holds, that, again, they have a kind of a digital bell set up as well, but the custom still holds in Dingle that bells are rung. If I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I was there, but when it's a man's funeral, you ring the funeral bells in peals of 3, dong, 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 pause, dong, 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 pause. Whereas for a woman's funeral, it's dong, dong, pause, dong, dong, pause. And I've heard that in other places, again, not in Kerry, where they will say ring out the age of the person who is being buried. So based on, the length of the, say if the bell is rung, say 75 times for someone who's 75 years of age, well, people hear that and they realize, okay, it's maybe a man that's dead, 75 years of age, and they'll understand whose funeral it is. So again, to a certain extent, we don't have that custom so much here in Kerry, It's maybe a stronger thing, again, from what I understand, up around, say, the Archdiocese of Armagh and so on. I know that the cathedral in Armagh, for example, does have a proper, kind of ring of bells. And I think, again, from what I understand, speaking to guys up there, that, it was part of the job of the organist in Armagh, because he also controlled the bells and play out tunes on them using the setup which was there. Again, speaking to guys who are based up there, I think a few more of the churches up on that side of the country are more likely to have, should we say, full rings of bells, and kind of, I suppose, a greater tradition of bell ringing. I mean, I suppose really the great, it's the Anglicans in England who I think have maybe the strongest tradition of bell ringing in Europe. It's a popular activity, in England in a way that it's not in Ireland. Now again, you occasionally hear of places in Ireland that do have the custom, but and again, my experience is that on the continent of Europe, there isn't quite the same tradition of bell ringing that you would find in England.
Okay, but I suppose when we only have the one here, I remember when I was young myself, when you'd be coming out from Mass, they would be ringing at the rope was coming down into the main hall there.
Yeah.
You don't see that anymore. So even just the single ringing of the bell, you have that pre-programmed here.
That's all pre-programmed in there,
And there's a timer, or you press the button when you come back in?
No, for our regular Masses and so on, it's all on a timer. That Monday to Friday the Mass times are a particular time, and there's a specific tune that rings out 10 minutes before Mass. Obviously you have the Angelus at 12 and at 6 in the evening and so on. And then, as I said, for particular occasions, for example, when a funeral arrives at St. John's, we press this funeral button 3 times and the funeral bell rings, and then if there's a wedding, then you can obviously play one of the tunes on here. There's over, I think, 500 or so between tunes and different peals. There are about 500 options here, and as I say, if you want, you can make it sound like Big Ben or St. Peter's.
Yeah, and I have heard it playing like Big Ben, because I work in Edward Street,
yeah.
And before I worked in Edward Street, I worked in Castle Street, so I'm listening to the bells all my working life. So it's really interesting to come in to see it. Well, thank you very much for your time, Father Bernard. Thank you.